Well, thanks a lot, Caitlin, and good afternoon, everybody. I'll try to make this quick and interesting. I guess first by starting with an assertion that, in my opinion, all energy efficiency programs are behavioral. Just like all energy consumption in the home and in workplaces and stuff is behavioral, I think that that's an important consideration to keep in mind. So, okay, we've talked about the role of energy efficiency in the Clean Power Plan, and the main thing I want to stress from this slide is that the decision about rate versus mass is going to have implications for how important the topic I'm going to talk about today, which is measurement and verification, is in terms of compliance with the Clean Power Plan. So if the state adopts mass-based approach, then measurement of EE is going to be not as important for compliance with the Clean Power Plan as it would be if a state adopted a rate-based approach. I think it's still important, and certainly when utilities are putting ratepayer dollars into EE, they do want to do good verification, but it's not a matter of compliance. It's just, if it's a mass-based program, you just have to measure the tons that are being emitted. But on this topic of evaluating energy savings, I think that the state of the art here leaves a lot to be desired. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think that's the case, and then I am going to talk about some solutions. So this is not it's not the end of the story, and I'm sure the end of my presentation will not be the end of the story either. But anyway, okay, so why do I say that there's a lot of issues with current energy efficiency evaluation, measurement, and verification? Well, a lot of the way that evaluation happens is, particularly for traditional types of programs, is that it's after the fact, it's focused on verifying installations of particular things that the program supports. And the energy savings associated with those installations are based on engineering calculations, models, or lookup tables of deemed savings that we heard referred to earlier in the day. And actual going out and measuring the effects on energy consumption tend to be rare. And why is this an issue? Well, it's important to recognize that all programs are behavioral, and it's important when thinking about evaluations to whether or not they meet the following criteria. For example, do they control for other confounding factors? Most energy efficiency programs are voluntary. Are there things that are different about the people who volunteer in from other folks that we may not be capturing in these evaluations? Would program participants have made some of these investments anyway? Is the behavioral response to these investments that they've made in their house assessed or assumed, or in their place of business? And does the evaluation capture any potential rebound, spillover effects, or interactions between measures such as lighting and heating, for example, or lighting and cooling, where there may be interactions? And just looking overall at the way evaluations are typically done, I would assert that there is an energy efficiency evaluation gap that we know things that we can do about and try to get less uncertainty here. So the key thing about understanding energy efficiency in evaluations is assessing what is the, as my research assistant used to call it, the but-for case. What would have happened in the absence of the policy, program, or measure? So really, to understand savings, you need a reliable assessment of the baseline. And things that aren't necessarily reliable are consumption before the efficiency measure took place. And that's because there could be other things that are changing at the same time that you want to take account of. The other source of baseline data that people often rely on that may also have a problem is comparison between participants in programs and non-participants. This could be confounding multiple effects. So how do we get around these issues and come up with a baseline that's more reliable and sort of has good scientific merit? Well, the best approach would be to use some sort of randomized approach, like a randomized control trial where folks are assigned to a particular treatment and other folks aren't, and it's randomly done. So you know that the only thing that differentiates them is this assignment to this particular program. In practice, that may be very, very difficult to do. So another method that has been used, for example, by folks at E2E, which is an energy efficiency group, study group that is out of University of Chicago, MIT, and Berkeley, but also other researchers as well, is a randomized encouragement approach, where everybody who's eligible to participate in the program, but you give other people in a random basis greater encouragement to participate in the program. Those are approaches to randomization. If randomization isn't possible, there are other quasi-experimental methods. I mean, we heard of some examples of quasi-experiments that happened in the real world in the earlier panels on public health studies, but there could be things done in energy efficiency as well, such as having eligibility criteria. For example, in building programs that exist for commercial buildings, there's a size threshold. And right around that size threshold, that may be the only thing that differentiates those buildings. It's not related to factors affecting their energy use. Also, waiting lists can be used as a quasi-experimental method. These things will facilitate evaluation by creating a natural control or comparison group. Another approach is, statistically, is to use a matching approach to find people, homeowners, or buildings or others that are a good control for your particular thing that you're trying to assess. When you do that, then the other thing that you need is access to a lot of data about the folks affected by the program and data about this comparison or control group. And then you can use econometric methods to explain full-on energy consumption, like what is the effect of being assigned to or being encouraged to be in this program on energy consumption. And one of the nice things about this approach is there's no issues with gross to net distinctions. If you've done the study adequately or accurately and well, what you're getting out of this evaluation is the net savings of the program, which I think is what we are trying to identify. So when thinking about evaluation, what are some things that we've learned from things that have been done, and what are things that we can do going forward? I talked about the idea of using a matching approach. So basically, the idea is you want to compare people to people who are like them, but not different in a way that would have an impact on their energy use. Okay, so this data that I have here is from a study that was done in Mexico of a very broad-based energy efficiency cash for coolers program. And the way the program worked is people were encouraged to bring in their old refrigerators and air conditioners and get a new one, and they got a subsidy for doing that. This study was conducted by some researchers out of University of California at Berkeley, where they had access to basically all the electricity meter demand data for homeowners in Mexico. But they didn't use all of that, but they used about 1 million observations, and they did a very careful job of matching participants in the program to neighbors who seemed very, very similar to them, mostly based on proximity, energy use being particularly driven by weather, and all these folks were subject to common weather, but also similar demographics. What this result shows here is first that they were able to get very tight statistical estimates of the effects of this program, so the bars around those dots are very close. This is the results for refrigerator subsidies, and you see that in most of the months for the year that after the program took effect that they tracked energy use, there was a negative effect of this program. The folks who participated had lower energy consumption in their household than folks who didn't participate. But what they also found is that the savings that they were able to measure using the statistical approach were about 1/4 the size of what the engineering model had estimated ex ante. I would think people would probably say refrigeration is one of those things that we think we really understand well. We know how much energy a refrigerator uses, and we know how much energy you could save from a new model. We should be able to predict these savings. And that wasn't the case here. So I think there's a cautionary tale, and we need more studies that actually look at in situ behavior. They also looked at air conditioners, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about that. In addition, there are programs out there that really do focus on behavior, and other types of programs as well, like information programs, again, trying to induce behavior, that really defy any type of engineering assessment when it comes right down to it. We haven't really talked much here today about the O-Power experiments, but sure most of you are familiar with them, where you basically receive information comparing your energy use to your neighbors, and these were implemented exactly as a randomized controlled trial, so they were able to really get a good comparison group in there, and they showed that just getting these letters reduced energy consumption on average by the folks who got them by roughly 2%. But again, there's other approaches that also, so it's a small effect, and you were able to identify it using econometric approaches. There's other approaches here that have been evaluated using statistical methods. The good news for folks in states who want to implement these approaches is that they've been described quite well in EPA's Sea Action report, and Diane mentioned Sea Action earlier on. The report titled Evaluation, Measurement, and Verification of Residential Behavior-Based Energy Efficiency Programs, Issues and Recommendations goes through all the methods that I just talked about in a much more detail. That document focuses on behavioral programs, but again, I would say all programs elicit behavioral responses, and I think it's important to start to expand our conception of evaluation so we can account for this and make sure we understand those as well as we sometimes think we do. Using these types of more rigorous approaches to program evaluation, I think it's important to have a neutral arbiter who's not interested in a particular outcome of the program. I think it's important to make data available for replication of folks. Randomized controlled trials have been used in a lot of both policy settings and private settings in terms of new drugs. And I think that any of these approaches, be it the randomization ones or the other statistical approaches, could provide insights that can be used to calibrate and operationalize energy efficiency supply curves and also help identify good policies. So in terms of shrinking this energy efficiency evaluation gap, I think we need to do two things: design efficiency programs for good evaluation and provide researchers with access to data that's necessary to look at these, the effects of these programs. I think when looking forward to a greater role for energy efficiency under the Clean Power Plan, be it in the context of either a mass or a rate-based approach, that there's opportunities to do this and to build a knowledge base that can help us put forward the most effective policies and target our resources better. So more policy experimentation and rigorous evaluation, I think, will lead to better understanding and more effective policy. And I look forward to the discussion. Thanks.